Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah is so vast that it's beyond our imagination. Allah resides in every being. Allah resides in every heart. Allah brings to each of us that which we seek. He is in tune with what it is we want and what we need. We have to be very careful as to the nature of our desires. We have to be very careful as to what we want. Allah knows best. So it is best to want what Allah wants for us. It is best to understand what He wants. Being within each of us, He has so many ears to hear. He has so many mouths to speak. And He resides in so many places of worship, because each heart is itself a place to worship. Allah is a great secret, a secret that man has the possibility of knowing. And man is the great secret of Allah. Allah understands man in a way that man can never know. Allah understands man and man's needs in a way man can never know. And because Allah understands man so well, He provides for what he needs. He sustains him. He nourishes him. He gives him what it is that he wants. Allah is a great power, a power greater than any other power in the world. His power controls every other power. Everything is a small dot next to him. Every power is a small dot next to him. We have to understand that. What we see in the world, what we look out in the visions that we behold, is Allah's artistry. He has taken the elements and he has created from the elements. He's taken and created a donkey. He's taken and created a tiger. He's taken the elements and created a horse. And he's giving them each their own face and their own sound and their own characteristics. He's created all of the trees and all of the bushes and all of the plants and all of the flowers. And all of these are scenes that we see. When we understand the nature of these scenes and that these are Allah's artistry, we will begin to see the world and everything differently. What we see right now is this whole world in front of us, and we feel we have to carry this world. And this world is very, very heavy to carry. But when we begin to understand that it's all scenes and that everything that we see in the world is also inside of us, then we can begin to understand that the world is not so heavy. It's but a small dot the size of a seed. If you've ever seen a banyan tree, you know that it grows and grows and spreads out and is this really immense, enormous tree. I saw lots of them when I was in Sri Lanka. But a banyan tree starts from a tiny seed, and all of it is contained within that tiny seed, which is something we need to understand. The whole world is contained within a tiny seed. And when we begin to understand that, then we begin to understand that we can go beyond this world into an open space where we don't have to carry the world, where we don't have to carry all the difficulties of the world, because there's something else. There's truth. And within truth, there is this immensity of power and light that is way beyond what it is in the world. We have 4 levels of consciousness that are higher than intellect. Intellect is at the same level of consciousness that the animals are. And the animals deal with and live within the world. Man deals with and lives within the world unless he can move beyond that consciousness that's called the intellect. The intellect is within the mind and is elemental in nature. And because it's elemental in nature, it deals with elements. And as long as we are dealing with the elemental world, we are trapped at the level of the elemental world. We must somehow transcend the level of the elemental world and go beyond the elemental world. Within the elemental world, there are the scientists who are constantly studying the elements and coming to conclusions about the elements. And they come to rather bizarre conclusions sometimes, yet they hold these conclusions to be self-evident and truth until somebody comes along later that disproves that truth and comes up with another truth. Bawa tells a story often of a scientist who wanted to do an experiment. And so the scientist caught a frog and put the frog down on the ground. And he screamed at the frog and said, "Jump, frog, jump." And the frog jumped 3 feet. And then he cut one leg off the frog and screamed, "Jump, frog, jump." And the frog jumped 2 feet. And then he cut a second leg off, screamed, "Jump, frog, jump." And the frog jumped 1 foot. Then he cut a third leg off, and the frog jumped 6 inches. And then he cut the fourth leg off, and he screamed, "Jump, frog, jump." And the frog didn't move. And he kept screaming, "Jump, frog, jump." And the frog didn't move. So finally he wrote down in his book, "A frog who has lost all of his legs turns deaf." And this is the scientific method. They come to conclusions. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the conclusions have any validity or the conclusions are real. But as long as a scientist who has a certain number of degrees writes it down, everybody accepts it. We have to understand that the world does the same thing. It cuts, it cuts, it cuts, and it creates philosophies, and it creates religions, and it creates conclusions. And then there are philosophies that will tell you God is deaf. And then there are philosophies that will tell you God is dead. And there are philosophies that will tell you that God never existed. And there are philosophies that will tell you that they are the true religion and there is no other religion that has any validity. And many of the religions seem to take on that tone, that their religion is the valid religion and no other religion has any validity. At the core of understanding Sufism is to understand that there is one God and that there is one human race and that there are no separations between the people in that race. And there are no differences between the people in that race. And as you create differences, as you create separations, you create a falsehood about life, and you create the problems that the world sees and the world has. When you understand the nature of one and you understand the reality of no castes and no races and no differences, then you begin to understand what is inherent within Sufism. What's inherent within Sufism is non-duality. As we do the zikr, the remembrance of Allah, as we try to pinpoint the true nature of things, and we say, La ilaha illallah, nothing exists except for you, Allah, and you are all that there is, we begin to leave the duality of scenes, the duality of races, the duality of religions, the duality of differences, the duality of languages, the duality of everything that we see, and we enter into the unity of existence. If you take a mirror and hold it in front of you, you see yourself in the mirror. There are two of you, but we need to get to the point where there is one of us, and then we need to get to the point where we no longer see ourselves. Now, the mirror has a coating behind it, and this coating is made of mercury. The coating doesn't see, but the coating creates the mirror. We have to become like the coating. We have to be that which exists but is not seen. Now, what else is there that exists that is not seen? Allah exists but is not seen. He has no form. You can't see him. He is the light. If we are to enter into that state of true unity, we enter into the mystical state of disappearing. We enter into the mystical state where we no longer see ourselves, but are merged within the one truth. So first there is man, then there is insan kamil, true man, then there is light, then there is Sufiyat, that place of truth within the light, and then there is that merging with reality. There is that merging with Haq. There is that merging with the Rahman. There is that merging with what we call God. And then we disappear into that greater thing, that power that is greater than every power. The drop returns to the ocean. The wave enters back into the sea. Like that, we need to enter into states that lose the consciousness of the I. To enter into a state where we lose the consciousness of the I is what the mystics call ecstatic states. In other words, the joy that overwhelms you is so powerful that the ecstasy of that state is greater than the attachment to the self, greater than the acknowledgement of the individual. And we lose the sense of individuality into the sense of the ecstasy of discovering the truth of the great power that rules over everything, that controls everything, that is within everything. Truth is a small point, but if we open it up, it expands and expands and expands and expands and is greater than anything else that we know. Truth is like this ever-expanding seed that envelops all of creation. And if we can leave our assumptions, leave our intellect, leave the qualities that are other than divine, we can come to know the grace of that truth and the effulgence of that truth. This takes a belief system in ourselves that the truth is available to us, and it also takes not taking the world seriously. It takes being able to overcome our difficulties and our problems and our indecisions and all of the things that bother us, and understand how small they are compared to the truth of the existence of our Lord and the secret of who we are in connection to the truth of the effulgence of our Lord. We are the only creation of Allah's that He put wisdom into. We are only creation of Allah that He put light into. We are the only creation of Allah that He made in such a way that we could know Him and He could know us. He wanted a creation who could understand His effulgence. So He created this secret creation called man. And man's purpose is to know Allah. Man's purpose is to find the truth of where he came from. He said to us, and He told us directly, if you can come to know yourself, you can come to know me. And for that to happen, how can we know Him? We know Him by becoming Him. We know Him by melding into Him. We know Him by merging into Him. And it is in that merging that truth arises. And then the mundane things of this world, the things that seem so overwhelming in this world, the things that put us into depression, into stress, into anxiety, all disappear because we know they are temporary. Every single thing that is temporary in this world disappears over time. And if we hold on to these temporary things and give them utmost importance, then we adhere to them as opposed to adhering to Allah. So we have to detach ourselves from that which is temporary. We have to detach ourselves from that which is difficult. We have to detach ourselves from all of the problems and the heavinesses and the burdens of this world. We have to replace all of those with overwhelming love. And when your state is in a love state, when the ecstasy of Allah's effulgent love overwhelms you, there's no room for worry. There's no room for problems. There's no room for anything else to bother you. When you disappear and you become the mercury that's behind the mirror, you become the truth. And then you become a mirror for others. The sheikh has disappeared. That's why the sheikh can do what the sheikh does. He has no personal motive. He has no personal need. He has no person. He is not. And because he is not, when you truly see him, you truly can see yourself. The sheikh is the example of what you are and what you can become. The sheikh is the mirror for your truth. And then you have to begin to reflect that mirror. So the mirror looks into the mirror. And when that happens, and there is no I in between there, that's when truth occurs, and the ecstasy of truth overwhelms you. The ecstasy of finding reality overwhelms you. And we have to search for these moments. We have to be able to recognize these moments when they happen. Sometimes you see a bird fly by that you've never seen before, and it has a color that you've never seen before, and it has a sound that you've never seen before. And the combination of all these things is so overwhelming that tears come from your eyes, but tears of joy in the fact that Allah was able to create this. His artistry is beyond our imagination. His artistry is beyond our ability. His artistry is beyond anything that we can do. My wife was an art major in college, and in her senior year, she had a show, and her paintings were large. They were about 5 feet by 4 feet. And for her show, she had done 8 of them, and they were up for sale. And they all sold in a matter of about 10 minutes. As soon as people saw them, they bought them. And after this show, I had a conversation with her. I said, we were just beginning our venture into this world, and I had just begun working. And I said to her, why don't you do more of these, and we can sell them, and you can start making some money. And she said to me, I can't paint anymore. And I said, why can't you paint anymore? This was after we had met Bawa. And she said, I can't compete with a strawberry. Only God can make the color of a strawberry, and I'm not going to compete with his artistry. And she just stopped. And that was the end of her painting career. But it was the beginning of her mystical career. She decided to go in another direction. Each of us have to have that moment when we decide to go in that other direction. Each of us has to find that specific moment that will make us understand that what we're doing is simplistic compared to what God does. But at the same time, that doesn't mean stop working. That doesn't mean give up what you're doing. There's a lot to be learned in the work that you do. Bawa gives the example of if you go looking for gems, you have to dig into the earth. And as you dig into the earth, you discover many things. You discover water, you discover different gems, you discover different elements, you discover all kinds of things. If you just walk into a store and you buy a gem, you spend a lot of money and you have a gem, but there's no discovery there. Your work can be a place for you to discover your attitudes, the way you do things, how you do them, and the nature of them. And it's also a place where you do your duty, because you have a responsibility, each of us, to support our families, to support our wife or husband, and to help with what we do in this world. So the Sufi learns in everything that he does, but he doesn't give up any part of what he has. He stays within the world, but learns not to be of the world. And this is a major lesson that each of us has to learn. We have to learn to be able to be in the world, but not take on the attitudes of the world. The world can be a cruel place, but we can't be cruel. The world can be an angry place, but we can't be angry. We are beholden to act in certain ways. We are instructed to become a certain way and not let that which is opposed to love and kindness overwhelm us. There's a story of a group of monks who went into the woods to meditate. But there were these fairies in the woods, and they didn't like having the monks among them. So they caused all kinds of disturbances, and the monks couldn't find peace. So they went out of the woods and they met a sage, and they told him about the situation. And they said, we can't find peace in the woods because of the disturbance from the fairies who live there. And the sage told them, you have to develop an attitude of overwhelming kindness and overwhelming love, so powerful that it counteracts the fairies' intentions, and that they pick up your resonance and your vibration. And that resonance is so strong that they can feel the love that you feel, and then the disturbance will stop. The monks practiced loving. They practiced being unconditional in their love. They practiced and practiced, and then they went back into the woods, overwhelmed with love, overwhelmed with kindness, overwhelmed with compassion. And the resonance that came off from them entered into the fairies who were disturbing them. And the fairies found that they could easily live together with these people, and that one love conquered the separations and the differences and allowed for unity to occur. There is but one love. There is but one God. There is but one truth. There is but one unity. We all need to find this truth and this unity. And in order to find it, all differences have to be done away with. All separations have to be done away with. All religions have to be done away with. All colors have to be done away with. All languages have to be done away with. All nationalities have to be done away with. We have to come to the pure essence of who we are, the non-elemental essence of who we are. And in understanding that non-elemental essence of who we are, we then take on a non-elemental consciousness and a non-elemental attitude. Understand that all of our differences are caused by the elements. All of our differences are caused by the nature of the elements. And if we can escape from the influence of the elements and learn about the truth of what is inside of us, we can find the truth in reality and the truth in God. Once we understand that everything that we see outside of us is God's artistry and God's scenes that he has created for us, we can begin to understand that there is something beyond these scenes that exists within us. Everything that we see externally exists internally. Everything that we have to fight with externally, we have to fight with internally. All of the lions and tigers and bears and elephants, all of the cheetahs and jaguars and donkeys and mules that we see in the world exist within us. All of the differences exist within us. And also the unity exists within us. And we have to go deep within ourselves, and we have to fight through all of the differences and all of the separations and all of the things that make us an egocentric maniac, that make us think we are more important than everything else and everything other. And we have to understand the sameness within all of creation. When we can understand this, then we enter into that space where unity exists. That's when we become the mercury that's behind the mirror. We don't see ourselves anymore. Bawa often talks about this state of disappearing to your own mind so that your mind can't see you. When you get to the place where your mind stops seeing you, then you've entered into truth. Because as your mind sees you, as your intellect sees you, as you walk around seeing yourself in every situation, you are creating duality. You are away from La ilaha illallah. Nothing exists but reality. Nothing exists but God. How can we claim our superiority if we don't exist? What exists are God's qualities. What we need to let go of are the non-exemplary qualities, the qualities that carry with them the taint of the poison of Satan. So anger has to leave us. Hastiness has to leave us. All of the qualities that Satan brings into the world have to leave us. So all that is left are the formless, compassionate qualities of Allah. And then we become Rahman. We become Rahim. We become love. We become the power of truth. We become that which is the greatest power in existence. When the semblance of ourself disappears, then the truth appears. This has to be our focus. This has to be what we intend. This has to be our meditation. This has to be our prayer. This is the Sufistic way. This is what separates Sufism from religions. There is no hierarchy. There is only Allah. There is no class of priests. There is only Allah. There is only the truth. And that's why the Sheikh is love. The Sheikh is compassion. And at the same time, the Sheikh isn't here. He is a manifest example of the truth of God. He is light in body form that is so powerful that it can be recognized by our eyes and our ears. It can be recognized even though we haven't transcended. But as we recognize, so do we transcend. As we understand, so do we transcend. As we look and absorb, so do we become, until we become truth, like he is truth. May that truth enter into each and every one of us. May we all become truth. May we all know truth. May we all live truth. And may we all be truth for each other. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.